Welcome to From the Ashes, the Dungeon Crawler Network podcast all about Ashes of Creation by Intrepid Studios. Bear witness to the rebirth of the MMORPG genre from the ashes of an industry that has left the gamers behind. I am your host, Aggelos, and I am back once again with two lovely ladies from the Ashes community. First off, we've got the Community Moderator Extraordinaire, Belewyn. Hey.
Hey there, and thanks for the warm welcome. I'm glad to be back.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been I think we tried to figure this out before the show when you first appeared, and I'm trying to remember if you appeared more often than not. Yeah, it's good to have you back. Really appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And that smiling face we see down there once again, I don't know why she keeps coming back, but she keeps saying yes, so I keep going. ChibiBree, how are you?
Doing well, thank you. I'm glad to be back also.
See, you're giggling a little bit there. Is it kind of like someone was doing something crazy in the pre-show right before we went live?
Not at all.
I was trying to get people to laugh. It wasn't quite working. But yes, we are back for another Phoenix Roundtable, and we have a pretty fun topic, I think, in store. But before that, I have to do a little bit of housekeeping with DCN, and I gotta give a special shout out to some of our new patron supporters who support us over at patreon.com/Dungeon Crawler Network. That is Owen Woods and General Cat. General Cat. Is that like Colonel Cat? Can cats be in the army? I feel like they would run the army really, really well. It'd be really clean, but we wouldn't have a navy because they don't like water. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, tangent. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. And of course, we had a 5-star review on iTunes from, hold on, I'm going to try to pronounce this the best I can. Townsendval. There we go. Left us a 5-star review on iTunes, and we really appreciate that because that lets people know we are a real podcast, that we say real words, and it never really matters. But you guys keep listening anyway, and we appreciate it. All right, guys. Rating. Right? PvE rating. I want to, preface that because some people think, rating in terms of PvP, but we're not going to touch that for right now. We are going to talk about rating in Ashes of Creation. Now, we have a few things I want to hit on first, and the first topic I really want to hit on is what does Ashes of Creation really need in order to facilitate a nice raiding community. But before we do that, I figured it might actually be nice to hear what some of you guys have done in past games and where your raiding experience comes from. So, Belewyn, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Excellent. Thank you so much. So I definitely have a background in both PvE and PvP raiding. I have a preference towards PvP raiding, and you knew that. But some of the games that I've done in the past, particularly with Latro, we had a lot of a focus on the PvE element of raiding. They didn't really have that strong of a PvP front. So we had things like Helagrod, which was, I think that was like a 24-man raid, so nothing close to what Intrepid is pushing for with Ashes of Creation. And then transferring that over to things like, let's look at BDO or Arcade, because Aggelos, I know you love Korean MMOs.
Oh my goodness.
So we will go there. The rating that was done over there for the PvE front was overly saturated with a PvP element, so it almost was dominated by the PvP front, even though you were fighting a PvE boss. So a little bit limited.
Interesting. And I know my cat's sitting here right here. Little personal story. My cat got away from us like 2 days ago, and I was worried sick because she was gone. Like, I didn't think she was coming back. And she came back, and now she won't leave me alone. So here she is.
Aww.
She's our 4th member. I love this cat. Say hi to everybody. You might hear purring. I don't know. That might get edited out in post, but there we go. All right. Chibi, what about you?
So, I have a history in raiding with World of Warcraft, pretty much only World of Warcraft. But it's been a cross between some, my least favorite, the Dungeon Finder, Raid Finder. situation, and that's just to kind of get an idea of what to expect for the raid. But I am involved with a lot of the guild progression raiding, and that's typical 20-25 man, kind of just sitting there for hours seeing if we can push ourselves to learn the mechanics and get better at it. And each week you get a little bit more excited as you get just that much further past the initial bosses and delve in towards the last and final raid boss. So I enjoy it a little bit more because there's a higher reward system there. So if I'm out doing questing or basic dungeons, I'm not going to get as good of gear as I would doing raiding.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. This cat's getting warm. Now, as for myself, I actually started raiding in World of Warcraft, as most people probably did. Started with Burning Crusade and kind of playing around in, what is it? Oh, Karazhan. I didn't get very far into that because, of course, I was new and I really didn't know too much about it. And eventually got up to Hyjal at the time, but never actually made it into Black Temple, which is kind of weird. I don't know how that flip actually happened. But by the time Wrath came out, I was really into the endgame progression rating. One of the guilds I was in was top 25 US. The guild name was Semantics. So if you actually want to look it up, you can check that out. I'm not sure where it would be stored still, maybe Guildox. But I was part of them, and I know I was part of several server first kills, including we were on Area 52. So we got server first of hard mode in Cataclysm anyway. What is the bird's name in Firelands? Erythrazor or something like that? Anyway, that's regardless of that. It doesn't matter. Ever since then, raiding has been something that I've really, really, really enjoyed. Obviously, as my time has decreased, becoming a father and stuff of that nature, it goes down. So therefore, I'm not really on that cutting edge where I was once upon a time. But it's still something that I really, really enjoy doing. So with that being said, guys, what does Ashes of Creation need to do to facilitate a vibrant raid community? To kind of start us off here, this is an interesting question that I kind of want to pose to you guys. Given the dynamic nature that Ashes of Creation is trying to build, with the idea of the world not being stagnant, how do you think they're going to do raids and even dungeons to this extent? I know they're going to do that, but raids in general when certain stuff does not happen unless it's unlocked via the map? Whoever wants to go first, it doesn't matter to me.
Chibi, go ahead.
This is an area that I'm not really sure of. I know that because they're not really looking to have an instance thing. We looked at the dungeons last time, and they're not thinking of locking down, but we're hoping they lock down at least the boss so somebody can't just come up and steal it. But the other thing in this case is interesting because it's going to be open world more so, it seems. And there's not really a faction versus faction like there is with World of Warcraft. So it's not like the Horde got the first hit, so it goes to the Horde. It's going to be a little bit different, I think. And I'm not really sure what's going to be needed because I don't really have a lot of experience with this kind of game. But I think if there's some way to facilitate some sort of group, whether you have to be grouped up in a 40-man group in order to be a part of the raid to get any bonus. You can't just come up and attack. I'm not really sure.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Just to kind of play off of what you were saying a little earlier, the idea of open world instances, or not instances, but open world bosses tends to frighten me a little bit because I know they did this early on World of Warcraft, and some of the older MMOs did this, EverQuest and things of that nature, where the raid bosses were on very long timers and were just out in the world. A more modern game that tried to pull this off, Guild Wars 2. Up until recently, though, the world bosses are a joke. 90% of them are still a joke. You spam your auto attack, which I know Ashes doesn't have one, but it's essentially spamming your, one skill over and over and over again and going AFK in Guild Wars 2, with the exception of like 2 bosses that they revamped years later. And even then, it's still not terribly hard if you follow some semblance of what needs to happen. Do you think open world is going to work, Belewyn?
Honestly, it's very touchy. Arcade was a prime example of that one. You can do it really well, or you can do it very poorly. And if you're trying to cater to the PvE audience, you're going to need to present something that is in the model that really is everyone is driving to this and everyone is focusing on this as a community or as the guild, versus Arcades with some of their world bosses that were definitely open world. It was more about the PvP element of it and actually protecting the boss or being the one that's going and zerging the boss down. So it's a precocious dynamic, and I'm not really sure how they're going to go about balancing that to make the PvE element so much more than a PvP predominated world event.
Right.
How do you balance that? How do you really...
There's something that Legion did recently with, there's these portals, and you can go through the portal, and in there it's kind of open world. Everybody is just going through these phases. Like phase 1, you have to attack these things, and the last phase is taking down that, portal boss, and then you can come back out. That's, I guess, one way, if they were to somehow portal or phase something.
So that's something similar that Arcade did with, sorry, my dog, with Thunderwing Titan, and they tried to semi-instance the world boss, but you really lose the open world element of that when you do that. So people can't interact. There's some type of a gateway or, let's say, a portal that prevents you from entering it unless you meet semi-qualifications, whatnot, or what have you. What I'm thinking of is more of, let's say, a volcano's erupting, and there's a boss that's coming out of there. It's a dragon. There's no way that anything less than a raid, or probably maybe 1 or 2 raids, can take it down. How do you make that such a meaningful instance that the people are going to get out there, they're going to rally towards it? Maybe a node is at risk. Let's say the Metropolis, the level 6, is being attacked and being sieged by this dragon. How do you make that such a meaningful involvement that everyone pulls together versus everyone going out where you got one portion of the people that want to see it happen and want to enable this dragon to destroy the node versus those who want to join together and let's protect the node?
I mean, that's the same premise of a lot of things. Like, even with the portal idea for the PvP, I know the PvPers out there would hate the idea of instances because that does kill open world PvP. And I think part of that open world PvP can facilitate an interesting dynamic with the world first race, if you will, the raiding mechanic, or the raiding as a competitive scene, PvE raiding as a competitive scene, by having entire guilds show up to defend against the other guys' progression groups. But I mean, I don't think that here's the question, I guess. Here's what I'm trying to say, and I have to kind of backtrack a little bit to try to get it to come out a little better. A raiding scene, a PvE competitive raiding scene, cannot exist in an open world PvP zone. Because so much of the competitive nature of it, racing to see who gets there first, could be thwarted by halfway through the attempt, an enemy team comes through and wipes you out, right? Well, a lot of people are like, so there you go. Yeah, you're right. So there you go. And then those people who are going for that competitive will go, okay, so here I go to a different game, to where scene actually is. And therefore that kills any competitive scene in, at least in a PvE kind of sense. I don't see how having bosses being open world would be viable in a competitive PvE raiding environment.
So I think that you touch on a really good point, but there is one thing that we know about Ash as a creation that really is going to help with this. There's no swift travel.
This is true.
So an event occurs. You're local to the node where the event occurs. You're out farming ore. You're looking for those resources to better yourself personally and financially. So are XYZ number of other people, and an event occurs. Like I alluded to, there's a volcanic eruption that indicates, oh gosh, something's wrong, something's coming. And all of a sudden a dragon emerges, and he is sieging your node. I don't know if they're going to do something like a server alert, or let's say a local alert, because I don't see them doing server alerts. You guys band together, and you realize that your node where you call home, you have instance apartments, or let's say your freehold is nearby. There's a need to defend it. Those individuals who are out in the world are not going to know that this event is occurring because there's no server announcement.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they did have a tune and said, oh gosh, I'm on an alternative tune. Let me log into my main because I want to disrupt it. Where's that main located? And how long is it going to take for that tune to be brought to that area to do any form of disruption?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So, and this is one of the reasons why I love Belewyn coming on here, because this just spawned another question I didn't even think of. Should these events, and I'm going to call them events, should they be considered something like, are these events enough for a rating group, or do you have to have something else on top of it? Like, yeah, these events are awesome. These server events that move the narrative story forward, which is what these things are designed to do, is move the narrative story of that server forward. These one-time-ish events, we'll say they're one-time-ish, because in all honesty, it's probably a script that will rerun if that entire node gets back up and those same criteria are met. Now, obviously, those criteria may be a little bit more varied than in some past games, But would this be considered a raid in the, I guess I want to say, the theme park mentality? I don't see how that one would fit in with a raid scene. That's just something that's awesome and happens. Whereas, raiding would be something more akin to dungeons that are more accessible more often. Because also, if an event's happening, is there a lot of time to actually learn mechanics and go through it before the world boss just wipes everybody out and your node's destroyed? No?
Chibi, do you want to take that?
I was actually just trying to think about that. It kind of reminds me of sieges in a way. I mean, if something is strong enough that you would, and there's enough people interested in, defending that node. I'm guessing if it's like a level 6, there's enough people invested in that node that people would want to, converge to try to take it down. But I think even with something like the sieges, where there's whole groups of people wanting to protect the node, also, I think that would spawn enough interest for people to kind of come together and create something. And it might take 2 raiding groups to do it, possibly. But, I mean, it could come down to your skill level of what you know how to do and your adaptability in a situation like that. As something is happening, you need to realize, okay, that's bad. If he does it again, this is what I have to do to get out of it. But it's kind of like stimulating a different part of your mind. It's not something that you can put a guide out and be like, okay, if this dragon comes out, you must do this, that, and the other. It's something that's like real world. When you go to fight a battle, kind of like what we were talking about last week, it's real, It's not scripted, so it's not something that you can just kind of expect ahead of time. It's something you kind of deal with as it happens. And, we have clerics who can revive people, and it also depends on how long it takes for you to revive yourself, get regrouped, and then do it again.
Mm-hmm.
So, Aggelos, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like Chibi is on the opposite side of the DPS and healing meters.
I am.
So
I'm a healer.
But in respect for that, what I like about what you said is that You're countering on a boss that comes that is not a static event. This is something that is ever evolving and changing, so it's unique. Every single instance of its occurrence is unique. That boss is not going to be some cookie cutter mold that you know what dynamics to anticipate. You can build the perfect party, and you can go out there as a raid, and gosh, we know it's going to be 40-man raids, maybe even more. It might take 2 raids to take down some of these events when we're talking about a level 6 metropolis. How do you prepare for that? Where do you get the party conversion for it?
And I actually like that you brought that up, because that was one of the things we were going to talk about here in a second. The idea of 40-man raiding, but before we hit that, and it will actually kind of play into it a little bit, mechanics, are they something that are required for a raid boss? Because I know how you just mentioned like this world event, it being different, it being its own thing, right? That every time it would be different. There is no really way to script, or not, I shouldn't say script, because they'll have a script, it'll do something, obviously. But for people to know ahead of time in most cases. But even for dungeons and stuff like that, we saw in the PAX demo that the little creature they were fighting in the PvE demo would actually go out and do different things. Like it was doing its breath attack, it was doing all that. Is that random? Is it just a random script that says do these events over and over and over again? Or was it scripted? Is mechanics something that are important? And does the idea of non-instanced allow for people to cheat mechanics and avoid them entirely? Yeah. See, that's kind of my issue with the idea of on top of the PvP. The PvP element doesn't really bother me as a person because I like PvP. And obviously, if I'm going after a dragon, I want to keep it to myself. I'll probably have to fight the other people who want to get it too, right? I mean, heck, look at The Hobbit, the not the movie, the book. After Smaug was dead, everyone was kind of rallying to steal the treasure, right? Like everyone's going to go see what's going to happen there, even though the raid boss was already dead. The idea of having to protect and keep the valuables to yourself, or so you get them first, is something that it does fit in the world, and I do like that. My issue is people being able to completely cheese mechanics that complicated fights that are a joy to actually do can be completely negated by just bringing enough people. I mean, not even from an MMO's perspective. Let's look at something like one of my favorite YouTubers out there did a parody, if you will, on Legend of Zelda. And he was talking about Ocarina of Time. And he was saying how almost all of the mechanics and stuff in most of the fights were just boring in almost the entire series. Most of the more fun mechanics were left to one mob, which was like the Iron Knuckle, I think it was, that actually had fun mechanics and made it an incredibly fun fight. But anything that didn't have mechanics that made the fight interesting was just essentially tank and spank, kill it before I kill you. And it was incredibly boring. And I tend to find that even in MMOs and a lot of world bosses, you're standing there just firing your whatever until the health bar goes down. That's boring to me.
So, Aggelos, First off, hey, listen. Second off, when you're looking at things like that, you're talking about just the boss dynamics. But how about even taking that down to a mod level, like just a simple general mob? We have games in the Korean market, which you're so fond of, like BDO, where it's spank and tank every single mob. You got 30 mobs on you. Can you just whip them all down? Yeah. What if you take that even a level further to where even the mobs provide the player a challenge that's unique, something that they have to anticipate and counter, and like level, certain attacks, etc., or dynamics that are unique to every single mob. Then you carry that over into leading into a boss where, like I had hinted at, do the bosses evolve? Let's say that Chibi and I, we go and we try to take it down with just the two of us. We fail. Does that mob learn? Does it evolve because we failed? and then we have to come back with maybe 3 or 4, or a whole party or a whole raid, because it's learned from our actions.
The scripting nightmare that would be.
Although I don't think it actually is. I mean, if you look at World of Warcraft these days, like with Legion alone, there's these different areas, and it depends on what gear you have, how intense it is for you specifically. Mm-hmm. So I could be in the same area as a level 100, and I could be a 110 with all of my awesome gear, and I would still have just as much problem with that same mob as the level 100 would, because it's scaled up to what I have, what I'm wearing, how much armor I have, and what I can do. And so I think if we have more smart AI like that, where there's that scalable opportunity, it creates an equal playing field for everybody. No matter if you are not very leveled and not very skilled, all the way up to pretty leveled and pretty skilled. And it kind of sets an equal playing field. Like, I would see it as a level 100, the mob is level 100. But as a level 110, I'd see the mob as a level 110. So it kind of scales in that way. But that's just with World of Warcraft. I'm not saying that's what Ashes would do, but I'm just saying that would be an interesting way of creating an equal level playing field. You know, that way it's not just, you know, easy cheesy mechanics, and also sometimes there's, like what Belewyn was saying, the mobs learn, they become smarter, you know, and they realize, oh, when the player does this, that's bad, I need to stay out of it, kind of thing, kind of like what we do to them.
Have either of you guys played Shadow of Mordor or Shadow of War?
Yes, I have.
Okay, let's talk about the Nemesis system. Could Intrepid incorporate something like that, where, you know, it learns from the encounters and it develops immunities? And let's say that 6 raids have now failed against this mob. Now you're talking about a mob that's bypassed epic. Let's go into mythic mobs. And what's it going to take? This mob knows your weaknesses. It knows my weaknesses. It's faced, let's say, of the 64 archetypes, it's faced 40 of them. What do you do?
You know, it's actually a fascinating thing that you brought up there with that, because, I mean, the idea of the Nemesis system is something that it makes sense in a single-player game, because it's only ever going to run into you. Eventually, and this is, you know, I agree, that would be something that's awesome, but I can tell you right now, the amount of wipes that we've had on certain bosses, how far is too far before there's like a reset on that thing before anyone can kill it? Like that, I don't know, that'd be really neat. I mean, I like the idea of it learning, as my cat just pulls my mic. I'm just curious what it would actually learn, and when would a reset happen for the mob? Eventually, I would imagine a reset would have to happen, right?
Yeah, eventually, if nobody can fight it and kill it. But I mean, I think it also depends on the scale that you have it learning. You know, does it fight once and then it learns? Does it fight the same types 3 times before it learns? And also, it could also depend on, okay, well, last time this didn't work when I did the lightning strike that went straight towards them. So maybe I'll try this other ability instead. And try a different, tactic against it. And so, like, it's learning, but we're learning. And as far as your worry of it overcoming everybody, I think that's something that you could easily scale. It could be something that you have it on a slower learning curve.
Well, if you wanted to. I mean, in all fairness,
that depends. Yeah.
Do you want that to be to the point that you can learn it, or do you want it to evolve to a point that every single chance is unique, and you're really going to have to know your class and know your skills so that you can progress?
I mean, this goes back to an age-old argument on whether or not fixed mechanics, like fixed rotations and phases, are something that are good. Are having a boss mob or something have a arsenal of skills that it can use at random.
I think both are good.
I like both. But again, one would be it's actually good. It's kind of hard. One of them, you're given a boss a set number of skills, right? It can do a breath attack. It can do this AoE cleave, and at part of the time, it'll go and it'll break part of a cavern it's in, so it causes a landslide, if you will.
Yeah.
That's awesome and creates a lot of replayability for the game, which is really cool, right? Having that random element, but that would 100% kill well, I shouldn't say 100%. I can't want to be that definitive. But it would kill a competitive raid scene only because, say we get a raid or a world first kill, and they're like, oh yeah, we got a world first kill of this boss, blah, blah, blah. How many times would people complain that, oh, it wasn't fair? The random or the random number generator was kind to them and kept giving them the breath attack, which is easily avoidable by 90% of the raid, where we got the AoE every single time and we couldn't heal through it, right?
Is there going to be a world first? Is that a for sure known thing?
I have no idea. I mean, that
because it could be something equivalent, saying like this group or this guild like defeated this like monster or whatever, and it could just be like a world or a server-wide known thing, or even like an area thing. Well,
the concept of world first, as you know it in World of Warcraft, didn't originally exist. Not from a game mechanic. It was just something the community did. And that was the same thing in every game that had raid bosses. EverQuest, there wasn't an achievement that you got that said world first. Achievements didn't even come in till what? Wrath, I think it was.
Really?
Yeah, no.
Kind of late, isn't it?
For them? No, I think it was Wrath is when achievements finally came in. That was one of their features for the expansion pack. Because if I remember correctly, Warhammer Online came out with their Tome of Knowledge or Book of Knowledge or whatever that was kind of like the precursor to achievements. It kept track of all your stuff, what you killed, if you downed bosses. And then like when that game came out, World of Warcraft like 4 months later said, oh, we have an achievement system, which was essentially a better functioning Book of Tome of Knowledge. But like the idea of world first will exist regardless of whether or not servers get notified, or if there's an achievement in game that says it. People will just be like, here's my screenshot, here's a time. No one else has posted they've killed this mob. I mean, that's how it was originally.
Yes.
There was only later when Blizzard and saw that, hey, people seem to enjoy this, did they incorporate it as a thing that when a server beat it, everyone got a server message. That came later. So the idea of a world firsting happening will exist whether or not Ashes of Creation actually facilitates it with some sort of in-game system. It's whether or not anyone will care. That's the thing. The competitive side, and you'll hear this from PvPers like crazy, right? Especially if they're Battleground or Arena. If there's a disadvantage on the map, they won't want to play it. Think Ultric Valley in World of Warcraft.
Oh,
Alliance had a definite advantage over it. So what did people do when they finally added in you can blacklist a Battleground so it doesn't appear on your list? Everyone just blacklisted AV because, well, at least everyone on the Horde did. So, you would go to sign into AV and it would take you 3 hours because there just wasn't enough people who actually wanted to play the map because it was so unbiased and unfair in terms of strategic placement of objectives. Almost every map created today in PvP for Battlegrounds is a linear, mirrored map, almost square, if you will, or rectangle, whatever shape, but it's mirrored. Everything is the exact same distance from point A to point B to point C, so no one can claim, oh, crud, we only lost that tournament because we didn't have the upper hand, we weren't in that position, Everything is identical. That same premise goes into PvE world first mentality. Is everything has to be the same for everyone across the board. So when you start adding in RNG elements or as Belewyn says, the Nemesis system, while that I personally think would be better for the health of the game, would end up killing any sense of a competitive PvE rating environment.
Wow.
But I don't think it would in the moment.
Oh, you would be surprised.
So, you touched on so many topics right there that I could run off in each direction. But the first one that I wanted to touch base on, you talked about the PvP elements of how it correlates over to the PvE. I think that let's talk about Chibi. She's a dragon, and she's an epic tier. When we take her down, and it's a raid, we're the world first to ever take down an epic tier dragon. That could potentially be what you're looking at in terms of okay, so we earned a title. We killed Chibi the dragon. Maybe, it has a different color because it's a title, or a different icon that carries with it for a title. And I know that's controversial. Some people like to have titles. Some people don't. It's been actually a very hot topic on the forums lately. But it has meaning to it, and I appreciate that. As a person who's been in World First Guilds before, I seek those opportunities.
Yep.
I want those, and that really drives me to play and to better myself. And DPS meter, no DPS meter, whatever, I'm going out and I'm hunting those opportunities that can say, hey, you know what, I was first.
Absolutely. No, I still have screenshots on my PC of our guild either getting a very hard achievement done, such as a raid boss or whatever, or my favorite is when we'd go back and do the meta achievements for raids to get them out, and then everyone in our raid group just mounts up and it's one big, because not a lot of people had those things, especially when it was at current level. When you saw somebody with that raid mount or that title, it was, oh, check that person out. They did something that not everyone and their mother has done. And it was definitely something that was very appealing to that type of player. I mean, myself included, and obviously Belewyn included. We loved going and doing those things for titles, or those cosmetic rewards to show off that, yeah, I was there, I did that. So speaking of, I was there, I did that, and then everyone raises their hand and you count and you really realize you only have 27 of 40 people. The return of 40-man raiding. And I say the return, even though over the past, several years, and I will have to say several years, the idea of raids has continued to shrink. And I love the idea that 40-man raiding was considered large when EverQuest 1, I believe it was. Their cap for raids was 72? I think it was 72. And then World of Warcraft did the controversial thing of shrinking it to 40. Can you imagine us having the argument now of, oh my goodness, we have a 25-man raid team and now they're changing it that, it's only 20. We got to let 5 people go. Can you imagine the guilds are like, well, we have 72 people and now we have to let 32 of them go? That just kind of baffles me that over time we've continued to shrink to the point where now a raid is anywhere from what? I think World of Warcraft allows 8. Final Fantasy 14 is definitely 8. It actually can't go above 8 unless it's their weird LFR version of raiding, which we won't go. We got 8 people, and I think even smaller ones. I haven't played Destiny 2 yet. I know that's pretty big, but I know Destiny kind of had raids, if you will. What was it, 5 people? 5 people was considered a raid in those games. And I know ESO, their raids are 12, because the idea was it was a normal party was 4 people, and you had 3 parties, and that made a raid, and it was 12-man. So the return of 40-man raiding, obviously, we all have our idea of if that's too little or too much. I know a game that more recently tried. Now, again, keep in mind, this is clearly a theme park. So raiding was kind of, funneled in there. Ashes has more than that, being not just a theme park. was I just said it. What was it? Ladies, help me.
Wildstar.
Wildstar. Thank you so much. For some odd reason I kept getting it stuck with Warframe, which I've never played. But yeah, Wildstar heralded in, especially at the beginning. Does anyone remember their commercials, like bringing back hardcore raiding and stuff like that? Attunements were a thing. Return of 40-man raiding was a thing in Wildstar. And that didn't go over too well with modern audiences. Obviously, it sunk. Now, Belewyn, I know you made mention in our pre-show, and I've heard this as well, that, and I think Steven has said it on one or two live streams where he said it would take multiple raid groups. So he's thinking more than 40 people to take down certain raids. Is that viable?
I think it is.
Okay.
Right. So I know that a lot of the modern games have focused on these really small, minuscule groups and they want to label them as a raid. Come on, guys. I call those parties.
Yep.
And it's pretty easy to find a party unless you're playing a game that's dead. So if you're in a guild, or let's say you're in a node which has the mechanics very similar to some of other games' guilds that include you as a citizen, how hard is it really going to be to fill that 40-man slot? Or we know that the node system is going to be so predominant that you have to vest your interests into that node. There's no question or a doubt. So if something's coming to siege your node, how many people are you going to be able to pull from, even far and above from your guild? We know that, speculative, we're looking at possible 3 alliances per guild that actually have a mechanic in and of themselves, and guilds could potentially be up to 300 people. So now you have 900 people to pull from. How hard is it to fill a 40-man raid from that? Really?
I think we're really starting to get into the idea of, and I love bringing this up because I love bashing modern generations. Sorry, Chibi. The instant gratification generation, where if I can't get this done in 15 minutes, not saying it's just for Chibi, sorry, but I had to. It's the age group, where if I can't get it done in 15 minutes, this is why we got things like Dungeon Finder and LFR in World of Warcraft. Oh, it's too hard. I can't get 20 people. Oh, I can't do it. So they come up with LFR and story mode and stuff like that. And they keep shrinking down the number of groups so that people can, I only play with my 5 friends. And I don't want to make new friends, because that would be wrong.
You're selling yourself short.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
You and I have both had that experience before. I always reference Lotro, but I can remember those nights going into Rift or going into Heligrod, where it's like, guys, this is planned. We're going to be here. It's going to take us 4, maybe 5 hours to do a clear on this raid. That's what Ashes needs. They need to have these raids that are so meaningful. And yeah, we do need some that aren't just random, but some that are schedulable or whatnot or what have you, that you can really plan as a guild to get out there, and you're not going to have a problem filling 40 people. There are so many people that are currently interested in the Ashes of Creation game that we haven't even touched or felt yet, that I don't think you're going to have a problem.
No, the idea is not finding the people. It's people not willing to step outside their very narrow social circles to facilitate any type of social interaction, which in my eyes, why are you playing an MMO in that case? I'm sorry.
True.
It's just, go play something else,
That's very true. Look at our community, for example. Just within the Ashes, we have people that don't talk. We have people that will type, or some people that will just use voice. Or I love to call out community members. And I'm sorry, I hope that's okay. Como, he doesn't talk, but he types and he's iterate, and it's awesome that we have, a mixed variety here. Guys, just meet some people. The purpose of this game and what Intrepid's trying to bring forth for us is a community, not just a game. It's a massively multiplayer game. So come on, meet some people. Jump out of your shell a little bit. It's not just about guilds, but this game is going to be about communities.
And that's what MMOs were in the first place. I think that's what people have lost over the past 20 years as games have shrunk down and down and down. And it's not even the games have shrunk down. We have a larger MMORPG audience than ever before. Both Belewyn and I are, how do I want to say this? We're both mature enough to have experienced times where, you know, these older games out there where MMOs weren't the big thing. When you played an MMO, people were like, you do what? Right? Like, it was not a cool thing to do. And when an MMO had 50,000 players, it was considered a blockbuster. You know, like, that was a thing. We have more people interested in this genre than ever before. There's plenty of people, but the games keep shrinking down to facilitate this quick get in, get out mentality, and therefore no one wants to group up with anyone outside of this. And it's what's killing our genre. That is what is killing our genre. We are turning our MMOs into single player RPGs that you can run across other people. You know, that
I
just
couldn't
so
agree more. I really could not agree more with you.
Well, awesome. Yeah. And I mean, hey, there are times where, you know, like, you don't need 15. If you only have 15 minutes to play, you don't raid. Like, that's just what you don't do. You set aside time that you can actually do it. And that's where, like Belewyn said, these world events, these are going to be awesome. But you're right. There are going to be people, myself included. I could be on. It's like, oh, there's a dragon spawning. I can't go to it. I got to leave for work in 15 minutes. You know, I can't do this. But having a scheduled raid night is something I could do, because I could set aside time to actually do it.
I didn't realize that Aggelos was such a commoner. That's what calling off of work is for.
Well, I may do that. Yeah, regardless. Yeah, that I'm just saying on a whole. You know, yeah. Set my son here in the chair. Just sit right here. No, just sit here. Yes. Hit that key. I'll just tell him to keep hitting the one key or whatever I need him to hit and keep going. But yeah, I don't know. It's just the idea of people, and this also spawns back to the idea of people saying, I deserve mentality. I deserve to see that raid content. Like, I want to be there to see it. Yeah, I want to be able to see the story. Great. You don't deserve it. Did you do it? That's why we get story mode stuff. That's why we get the stuff you can jump in every 10 minutes. Because someone complained that I don't have time to set aside to raid, but I want to see the story, but I don't want to YouTube it or something like that. So you got to make it easy enough for me. Well, chin up, Buttercup. You know, you don't get everything. Sorry. That's how it goes.
I just want to say some stuff too.
Okay, go for it.
First off, I feel like that's why Ashes of Creation is in existence. It's there to break these things that the current MMOs have gone down towards and have become. It's kind of, if you will, a reset back to what MMOs should be. And I mean, I'm not sure where I heard this before, but I mean, granted, a lot of MMOs are losing basis because, you know, they already have their online friends. You know, they already have the friends that, you know, we grew up, like my generation, as you were talking about, grew up with the internet. We met our friends on the internet. You know, we have our set group, but sometimes I think it takes something like Ashes of Creation where you have to get more than X amount of people that you're used to. That pushes you to kind of find out other people. It allows you to find who's good at raiding in a certain role and who's not. And it kind of allows you to be like, okay, I could be a mentor to this person and kind of help them out and get them better. Or it could be like, hey, that person was really good at fulfilling X role. Let's invite them back to the raid the next time we can do it. If there is a scheduled one or if there's a random one, let's try to make sure that person's on with us. And it kind of will take you back to this point where, like, you are starting to find friends online again. You're starting to find other people in the community. And the best part about Discord right now, if you are chatting in the Discord for Ashes of Creation, and you are getting to know the people, the members that are interested in this game, and you come across somebody's username, if it happens to be exactly the same, like mine will be, I'll be going by Chibi everything. So if you happen to come across somebody that you've met in the Ashes community Discord, you can be like, hey, I recognize you from the Discord community before the game came out. Like, we should hang out sometime in game, play or something, you know, and it kind of allows like an exterior, really quick access to the community that you can also get in-game if you happen to be on the same server, or if not, you can compare experiences from people from other servers, and it kind of gives people something to talk about again. Right. And another thing is with the 40-man raids, yes, I am a part of raid progressions that are smaller, but that's also because that's all the people that can come and do the raid. You know, the amount of people that have the time to sit across, like, I don't want to do a raid in 15 minutes. Like, if I do looking for a raid, it's only because I'm trying to figure out the mechanics ahead of time before going into a raid with my guild and just seeing if I can get anything freebie along the way and also see the story. Because once I get into an actual raid, I mean business. I don't want to sit there and look at a story clip. I want to continue on to the next boss and try to gun them down with my group, you know? And so even though I've never really raided that much with World of Warcraft, and it's more of a recent thing, it's something I've always wanted to do. And so I feel like it's very important for you to have that ability to sit there and have that level of difficulty where it's not just a 15-minute thing. That's why they made mythics, honestly. There's mythic dungeons, and you could go in there, and they're like little mini raid groups for a group of 5. But then you've got your bigger raids that take hours to get through, not only just progression, but once you get through that progression, it takes a good hour or so just to get through all of the raid. And I think bringing that back with this level of difficulty where it takes a while and it takes everybody's effort together, you know, to beat down a boss is something that's going to kind of help revive, as well as the guilds with these other 3 guilds are also my friends kind of thing. That would allow more people to be like, hey, you're a friendly guild. We are aware of you. Let's see if we can exchange some of our members. And that's just the smallest nutshell of how to like grow your online friendship, you know, and your online friends list, you know. And I think that's something that's needed.
I actually like that you brought up the Alliance, and we'll kind of end up with this. EverQuest in particular had this, where there were very few raiding guilds. In the beginning, there were a lot, but near the end, it started becoming a raiding alliances where you'd have guilds who would do raids, and they would ask in their alliance in order to actually go and get other members. So you'll likely, especially with 40-man stuff, if your guild does not have enough to front the people by itself, and that's not saying that your guild doesn't have enough players. I run a fairly large gaming community, and we have quite a few members. I mean, our ESO guild alone has over 300 and some odd members. Whether or not they're all online at that time, you know, kind of hit or miss there. And some people just are not interested in certain types of content. So it is very hard at times. You may have 80 people online, but of those 80 people, only 20 of them actually want to do raids. Some people don't want to at all. Alliances might be something that will help fill that gap. It all depends on, again, how the bosses are done. Do they actually have mechanics that are actually in depth and take a lot of learning? Or are they going to be pushovers? I mean, getting 40 people who need the precision of, you know, Blood Legion in World of Warcraft to down like super hard modes, it could be pretty difficult. But are we going to see raids like early Molten Core where 40 people are standing around and there's very few mechanics in many of the fights? A lot of people were just standing around doing nothing, it seemed like. We'll have to wait and see. All right. Guys, we've reached the end of another show, so why don't we go ahead and give our final thoughts and where people can find you. So let's go ahead and start. Belewyn.
Always starts with me because mine is too easy. If you're in the official community Discord, if you're on the forums, I'm there. That's where you'll find me. If you ever have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me via DM or in the channels. I'll respond as fast as I can.
I can vouch for that. She gets back to me really quickly. Like for this show, in instance, I think it was like 30 seconds. It was insane. It was nuts. Anyway, also, Chibi.
So I stream generally on Twitch, and I also am a co-guild master of Syndicor. You can find all of my information for Twitter, Instagram, and whatnot on my Twitch account. I am ChibiBree.
There you go. Cool. And a little bit more housekeeping I said I was going to do here at the end. I know we've been getting a lot of guild applications for the DCN guild in Ashes of Creation. And one of the things that we do is we do set up a little interview so we get to know you. We want to know you as a person, right? We want to get to know you, integrate you into our community. So I encourage people to join our Discord channel ahead of time. You can find links to that all over on dungeoncrawlnetwork.com. Even if you don't plan on joining, you can go ahead and be part of our greater community, because that would be awesome. But one thing I have to say for the people who put stuff in, if you're not already part of our Discord community when you're filling out the guild application, please make sure you put your Discord number as well as the name, because it makes it very, very hard if you just give me your Discord nickname without the full number. I can't get a hold of you. So it makes it very, very, very hard. So if you guys would be great and do that, I would greatly appreciate it. All right. Done with that. We're done. All right. You can follow me personally at Aggelos, AGGELOS_WF on Twitter, because that's where I do a lot of stuff. You can follow everything we do, dungeoncrawlernetwork.com. I actually recommend just going there. It links to all of our other stuff, but if you don't want to go there, we got twitch.tv/dungeoncrawlernetwork, facebook.com/dungeoncrawlernetwork, Twitch. I already said Twitch, youtube.com/dungeoncrawlernetwork. You get the idea. It's pretty easy to find us. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of From the Ashes, and we will see you in Ashes of Creation. See you later, everybody.
See ya.
Thanks.